Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this first meeting of the Corporate Parenting Panel. My name is Emily Wilcox, Democratic Services Officer. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website, and with this in mind, I would like to welcome members of the public watching this live. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park. We then will need to wait in the car park until further instructions. I'll now move on to the first item on the agenda, the election of the chairman for 23-24. Do we have any nominations, please?
I'd like to continue the chairmanship as previous, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Stephen Rowe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgs. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Are there any further nominations? No? OK, I'll take a vote on that then, please. All those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. I'll now hand over to Councillor Rowe.
So, good morning to members, officers, press and public attending this corporate parenting panel. My name is Councillor Stephen Rowe, and I'm pleased to be appointed once again as chairman of this panel for the third year of this council term. The second item on today's agenda is the election of vice chairman for this panel. I would like to nominate Councillor Higgs for vice chairmanship of this panel. May I ask if we have any more nominations? And could I ask if we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Cook, thank you. We'll now move on to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you, Councillor Haig is appointed as the Vice Chairman for this panel for 23-24. If you'd like to take your seat. I just would like to thank Cleo for the last 2 years of doing this. She's been a good support. Unfortunately, fortunately for her, she's got another job, so she's no longer able to attend the panel. Okay. Right, before we move on with the main business of the meeting, can I remind you that if you wish to ask a question in the course of the meeting, can you please raise your hand? Can I also remind members of the panel to switch on their microphones when invited to speak close to the microphone, and to switch the microphone off after you've made your contribution. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. Please can you keep your questions and contributions succinct and concise. So we'll now move on to the main agenda. First item is apologies for absence. Emily, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Whittington and Polly Coombs.
Sorry, thank you. I was just reading that bit. The next item is declaration of members' interest. Do any members have anything they wish to declare that has not been previously in their pecuniary interest forms? No, okay, no declarations today. You obviously can bring it up if something comes up as we go through the meeting. So we move on to item 5, minutes of the meeting with the panel on the 9th of March 2023. This item is to confirm the minutes of our previous meeting, which can be found on pages 3 to 6 of the agenda pack. There is one slight change from the agenda pack that's gone out, and that's Nicola Wilkinson's correct title is NHS Lincolnshire ICB. So with that amendment, I propose that they are a true record. I'd ask for a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Higgs. And all those in favour? And any against? And one abstention. Thank you. Thank you. Those minutes are agreed as correct and accurate record. Next item is announcements. Initially by myself, I attended the Fab Awards, which were a fantastic event. So our Care for Children came, they collected their awards, they bounced about, they sang, they ate. It was super. It's the first one I've been to. I think it's the first one since COVID, and it was real. It was fun. It was good being a councillor. Andy Morris and myself attended South Stephen, and we did a training event on corporate parenting, which was very well received. And I've already had an email asking that one of them certainly would like to attend, and several of the other council members from SK would like to come to our meeting and see how we do it. Very positive, super meeting, and I thank Andy for everything he did with that. We, as I'm sure you all know, have just had our Ofsted rating announced, and I think this is the first meeting since the announcement. Obviously, very good news. We are once again seen as outstanding. And I just want to thank everybody involved in this panel who obviously we contribute as well, but especially I'd like to thank all the officers and everybody else involved with the staff that keep us at such a fantastic level. And I know that we're not going to sit on our bottoms and do nothing, and I know we're already looking at ways of becoming even better. And that is it from me. Tara, did you have anything you want to say?
Thank you. No, I just wanted to obviously, express how fantastic the Fab Awards were for our children in care. I was really humbled in terms of the achievements, in perseverance, in education. And it was fantastic to see so many carers, foster carers and our residential staff there supporting the children and young people. It was so well attended, and you walked in and it was vibrant, and the looks on those children's faces when they came down, to receive their award was just amazing. So again, thank you to everybody that was involved in that and setting it up. It was a brilliant event.
Thank you. So we move on to item 7, Children in Care Performance Report. This item is on pages 7 to 34 of the agenda pack and enables the panel to consider and comment on the report and accompanying appendices to this report that provide key performance information for Q4 2022-2023 that is relevant to the work of the corporate parenting panel. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the comments performance information contained in the appendices of this report and recommend any actions or changes to the Executive Councillor for Children's Services, Community Safety and Procurement. The report will be presented by Tara Jones, Assistant Director, Children's Safeguarding. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you. So this report highlights our performance within Q4 of 22-23. So there are 18 measures in total that relate to children in care that are reported on in this quarter. Of these measures, 8 did not meet their target, 1 was ahead of the target, and all the rest were on target. So I'll just pick out some of those where we didn't meet the target and provide an explanation. So the first one relates to adoption, and this is the average time between a child entering care and moving in with its adoptive family. So in Q4, our performance was 505 days. So less days is better in this performance measure. So you can see that this indicator is improving from Q3, which is 517. The panel has heard previously that this is based on a 3-year rolling average. So our current performance takes in one of the pandemic years, where you'll know that there were significant delays in respect of care proceedings and ultimately decisions relating to the adoption of children. So moving forward, this will be a much improved picture. I'm really pleased to say that within the courts, things are moving, our length of care proceedings are reducing, which is fantastic. All court hearings are now back in person, which has certainly helped to accelerate performance in that area. So all signs are, you will see this number reducing into the next year. Moving on to the next indicator, that is the stability of placements of children in care. And this indicator identifies those children who've experienced 3 placement moves. So our performance is in line with the recently published data from other East Midlands authorities, where an average of 9% of children in care experience 3 placement moves in a year. Bit of caution to this data, because some of the moves are positive. So for example, in this cohort, there were some children in care that moved placement because they moved on to their adoptive placement, or they moved with the carer to a new address, or they moved back to family or connected family members, or they moved from a residential setting to a fostering environment, or from independent out-of-county residential foster care back into in-house placements. So even though that's affected this particular indicator, it was certainly a positive outcome for those children. However, within this cohort, there are a small number of children and young people whose placement's been disrupted. So you'll know that our in-house fostering and residential care is always sought first and foremost for children care in Lincolnshire, and we only seek independent placements where it is deemed appropriate for that child. The market continues to be volatile. We have seen instances where external providers has issued 28 days notice, which means that then that results in a placement move for that child. So you will see in Deborah's report that our recruitment remains strong in respect to foster carers. We still need to recruit more and more. Our children in care numbers have gone up, although they've stabilised. So this is kind of a mixed news really in terms of this indicator. Positive, but we are not immune to the national situation in terms of market volatility and placements. So moving on to the next indicator, staying on the same theme, this is again around placement stability, but this is the percentage of children in care that remained in the same placement for at least 2 years. This performance is below target. For all placements, the service continues to ensure that foster carers are well supported and that potential problems are identified early to provide the right support for those foster carers to continue to meet the needs of those children that are varied and complex. We've used the Value in Care tool to support placements. We've embedded the Care and to Learn approach to support our foster carers and our residential staff. Nonetheless, we do still experience some stable placements that disrupt for a variety of reasons. It might be a change in the circumstance of the carers or the residential placement, or it could be because of the children's increasing complex needs and the foster carers feel that they're not able to meet those children's needs. We've also seen an increase in the entrance of older children, which means there's been some challenge in terms of identifying longer-term accommodation options. Also within this cohort, so those older children that come in, they will not be in placement for 2 years, the same placement for 2 years, because they'll initially come into foster care and then right and proper they will move into supported accommodation. So that already means that they're out, we're out in terms of this performance indicator. So again, you know, you have to look at some of the reasoning behind this indicator. Again, you know, we've got a positive recruitment drive through the Children in Care transformation. You know, you will know that we're opening our first new children's home, Robin House, shortly. And then we have our second children's home at Louth, which will come on board in early 2024. So really acutely aware of the sufficiency agenda and certainly got a number of actions to address that. The next indicator is the percentage of children in care with an up-to-date health check. So we're at 90.9%, which is an increase in an upward trajectory from Q3 performance. So again, I've presented to panel before that this cohort includes an increased number of our older children, our later entries into care, and also our young asylum-seeking children who've come through the National Transfer Scheme. So a number of these young people choose not to access their health assessment for various reasons. One of the reasons is they feel that they can go to their GP and they can manage their own health needs, even though we continue to rigorously support them to have their health assessment. You'll also see that there's been a lot of activity to improve the timeliness of our initial health assessments, and that measure's significantly improved. But again, a small cohort of those young people that refuse to access their initial health assessment. But it's really pleasing to see that that's an upward trajectory from Q3. The next indicator is children in care persistent absent rates from school. So I just want to say, what do we mean by good attendance? So, you know, we believe that 100% attendance is what we should strive for, but anything below 95% attendance is unacceptable. You'll also know that in May 2022, the DfE published the guidance Working Together to Improve School Attendance. And this guidance gives a clear message that improving attendance should not be the responsibility of one organisation, but it should be achieved by working collaboratively and addressing the root cause of absence. So it's everybody working together. That includes the social workers, the education settings, virtual school, other partner agencies. So you'll know that our children and young people have performed well historically in relation to persistent absence. With the last 3 years of complete data prior to COVID showing fewer persistently absent pupils compared to national, region and statistical averages. As with overall absence, there have been large increases in persistent absent across the board, across all pupils. So that's not just our children in care, but our cohort of children in Lincolnshire as a whole. What have we done to kind of support that attendance? So we've quite recently just produced our attendance strategy, and again that's a strategy for all organisations, and everybody has a role to play in that. What we've also done is we have the virtual schools introduced half-termly attendance monitoring meetings to enable the early identification of dips in attendance of our children in care. And in line with DfE statutory guidance, from September 2023, local authorities will also be carrying out termly support meetings with every school nationally to identify, discuss and agree joint targeted actions for all pupils for whom attendance is below expected levels. Also, some of our children in care we've identified that have severe and persistent absence. It's sometimes and often down to emotionally based school avoidance. So those children can receive support through our ladder of support, which includes the emotionally based school avoidance pathway, and that's for those children in care with severe persistent absence. So a lot of support wrapped around these individual children and the schools, and also supported by our new attendance strategy. What I'll do, because it's an education indicator, I'll just bring in Sarah Lane in case I've missed anything or you want to add anything, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. Yeah, just to echo, we have introduced the targeted attendance tracking meetings where we're looking at cohorts of our children in care with live attendance data and identifying actions, either discussions with carers, discussions with social workers or schools to see how we can improve the attendance. And we're also looking at commissioning some educational psychology hours so that we can work with some of those young people who, as Tara just mentioned, are persistently absent but are needing some further work with emotional regulation and support outside of the EBSA pathway that Tara mentioned. The local data indicates that our attendance is improving. So our live data at the moment shows that we have currently now got fewer children who are persistently absent and more children who are attending regularly. That's just the soft local data through the PEPs and through our tracking systems.
Thank you, Sarah. So moving on to the next indicator, this is the percentage of children in care achieving grade 9 to 5 in English, Maths, GCSEs. So you'll see that we're at 4% at the moment, and this year's cohort did include an increased number of pupils with education, health and care plans who attended special schools compared to last year. We've seen that what's affected this indicator is changes in placement for some year 11 pupils, and that resulted in school moves, which we try to avoid at all costs, and that's also impacted on the outcomes. Despite the drop in performance in terms of attainment, what I think early indications is that this year that performance is going to increase and be higher, which is much more positive. So in terms of support, the virtual school tracks the targets of pupils all year and provides support and challenge to schools to ensure that children are on a trajectory to meet their targets. Again, Sarah, is there anything else on the predicted increase?
Yeah, so just to clarify, at the PEP meetings, the school are asked to record what the target grade is for a young person and whether they're working at expected levels, below or above expected levels. And that then opens the conversations around what support and interventions need to be put in place. As Tara mentioned, the local data is indicating due to the cohort this year, data is going to be significantly increased for our GCSE outcomes. That's on our predictions. We are obviously not examination boards, but we do know all the children attended the examinations, because sometimes, again, walking into an examination room can be very daunting for our young people who are very worried about further sort of rejection or being told that they're not good enough. And sometimes our young people do struggle to actually sit into exams, which is why the data was better during the teacher assessment years. But we have been tracking the pupils closely. Again, we've built in regular progress tracking meetings, and we're looking optimistic for next year.
Thank you, Sarah. So moving on to the next indicator, this is 16 to 17-year-old children in care who are participating in learning. And you'll see that we're currently at 83.2. So although the performance for this quarter is below the lower target tolerance for this performance indicator by 2%, again, it does show an 8% improvement on quarter 3 and a slight improvement on quarter 4 of last year, so moving in the right direction. So the virtual school continues to coordinate termly personal educational plans for all our 16 and 17-year-old children in care, and these bring young people, social workers, carers and providers together on a termly basis to focus on educational need and ensure that our young people are supported appropriately while participating in learning. Some of our young people in care struggle to access or sustain engagement in learning. That's because of some of their experiences, their emotional health at this particular time. You'll be aware that we've invested heavily in terms of mental health and emotional support to our care leavers, and I think you'll hear some more of that later on in the Leaving Care report. Young people are supported by post-16 pupil premium funding, However, some of the challenges we're facing in securing mid-year school placements for recently arrived unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people aged 16, and that's impacted on this quarter's performance. But it is moving in the right direction and a better performance than this time last year. So the next indicator is care leavers in education, employment or training. So this measure remains below target and has declined slightly. So the Leaving Care Service continues to monitor every single young person who is not in education, employment or training. And the service continues to report monthly on the efforts of the service to re-engage individuals back in education, employment and training. So the corporate parenting manager tracks this performance regularly and monitors those young people who fall into NEET and those that re-secure EAT. So again, we conducted a survey with every care leaver who was not in EAT, and that highlighted that the main barriers to EAT are poor mental health, depression and anxiety, a lack of qualifications and substance misuse. That paper has been shared with members to aid with the context. So again, the Leaving Care Service is working closely with the corporate parenting manager to look at the emotional wellness and the recovery of young people alongside a plethora of activity to support young people accessing EAT. And again, as I mentioned, mental health, emotional wellbeing is one of the biggest barriers and so one of the biggest priorities for us in terms of supporting young people to access EAT. So I think that concludes the performance report for quarter 4.
Thank you, Tara. Councillor Higgs, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask Tara and Sarah what effect the migrant children coming into the county are having on these figures. Generally, it looks as though the figures are still looking fairly robust at the moment. But I wonder, do you feel that the council has sufficient backup at the moment to cope with the current situation leading on to the near future as far as you could see it? Thank you.
Yes, I'll just start in terms of explaining the national transfer scheme. So our unaccompanied young asylum seekers come through what we call the national transfer scheme, and every local authority participates in that mandatory scheme. That also attracts grant funding for each young accompanied asylum seeker. Yes, whilst we do have grant funding, you know, clearly this has added in terms of our increase in our cohort of children in care. Again, it's impacted on our placement sufficiency, and so you'll see that cohort will impact on almost every indicator. But I'll just bring Sarah in terms of any of the education.
Yeah, I think more recently we've had increased numbers of young people who have been assessed as being aged 16 but still statutory school aged. So in effect they should be going on to a role of a mainstream school in year 11. Because a number of our young people are placed with independent foster carers outside of Lincolnshire, we're working with the other local authority school admissions to identify school places. And we have had some challenges due to capacity in schools in other local authorities, where schools have been unable to offer year 11 places. However, because these young people also attract pupil premium, as a virtual school, we have commissioned some online ESOL provision. So all of our young people are accessing some element of learning, but are not on a school role. And also for the 17-year-olds, so once they've left school, again, there's been capacity issue within the local post-16 colleges around the availability of places for ESOL. And also the times of arrival, because colleges will normally only accept students at the start of an academic year. So again, because we can access the post-16 pupil premium, the virtual school has worked with providers to commission some ESOL tuition so that those young people are accessing ESOL but are not classed as being on a school role or on a college role. It's only a part-time offer until we can get them into a school or a college placement.
Councillor Matthews.
I've got a specific technical question, and it is the number of asylum seekers. This is to do with 16 to 17-year-old children in care participating in learning, and you make a specific reference to challenges in securing mid-year school places for recently arrived unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people aged 16 has impacted this quarter's performance, but it doesn't say whether that's 1, 10 or 100. So I'd like to know how many that is. And then I'd also like to know how home education, which in essence is what we're engaging with through our provision of additional out-of-school support, impacts the figures, and whether there is more scope for us to take control of young learners who don't wish to attend school because of, I know you've used the phrase, emotional issues or drug abuse issues or a challenging background with education. And I just wonder if there is another route we can take, because clearly we can talk to these people because you've been praised for it, and I know there's a lot of work going on, whether we should take even more control of providing an education route to them through our own direct actions. So 2 questions.
With regards the home education and home tuition, whilst we're ensuring that the young people are accessing a level of education, that is impacting on school attendance figures and obviously on examination qualifications, because although tuition can provide the learning, it can't provide the examinations at the end of it. So this is why we're looking at this more specialist support from educational psychologists around how we can support our young people in returning to school to have a better impact, because we know the impact of attendance on outcomes. If you're not attending school, you're likely to have reduced outcomes. I haven't got the data to hand. We would have to get that information from our performance team on the number of UASC specifically that affect the measure. But I think the other factor as well, as Tara mentioned, is the increased number of children who are late entrants into care. So sometimes these young people who are coming into care at 14, 15 probably have a history of disengagement in education, and they've missed some of the key foundations to learning. So some of our young people may be coming into care with school attendance around 10 or 20%. So although on an individual basis we're seeing increases in attendance, they're not meeting the expected thresholds, which impacts on the data, and they're unlikely to receive their GCSE outcomes because of the gaps in their learning. So we're making progress, but we can only make progress as quickly as we get the children into care.
Sorry, I didn't hear the specific figure about the asylum seekers.
Yeah, I haven't got that data to hand, so we'd need to get that from the performance
That'd be really
team and
helpful.
report back.
But, so we've got late entrants children coming to our service who might have experienced 20% education. So in other words, it's going to be pretty challenging. What more can we do to top up that engagement? So the psychologist, great, understanding why they're not going, but is there anything we can do to provide catch-up to get them back into the system?
Absolutely. Sorry. Yeah. So when a young person comes into care, we would have an initial PEP meeting within 10 days, and we'd be looking at what the barriers are, one, to that young person accessing education. That might be attendance. It might be they've not even got a school place. So then we have access to pupil premium, so we can work with the school to put interventions in place. The government provided school-led tuition, additional funding and recovery premium. So the school has lots of funding opportunities to put additional interventions in place. We can put home tuition in if that's appropriate. For some young people it's not appropriate, so we work at how they can be best supported in school first, and we provide the school with the appropriate funding and resources to put that support in place. And then the PEP will be measuring the impact of those interventions on a termly basis.
I'd be really interested to see some of the actual numerical breakdown on those things. And I'd also be interested to know what the churn is. So children are coming to us at 13, 14, 15. Are they staying with us until their adult engagement, in other words, through that transition into adults, or are they leaving again? So I know you can't answer that question now, but I feel awful asking this question. I know you're working your socks off, but and we've got some improvement, but we're not seeing massive significant improvement, and I just wonder what more we can do, which is not a challenge or criticism for you. It's a genuine question about how we can improve the situation further as things stabilise nationally anyway, whether we should be committing more asset into catch up for these late entrants. But if they're churning with us for a year and gone again, one has to wonder why we're being measured in this negative way on that basis. So churning and the specific numbers would be really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely, and it's worthwhile noting that our young people do often get there, but get there at a longer period of time and outside the measures. So, you know, we do have young people who may leave school with lower qualifications, but if they've missed potentially 2 to 3 years of their secondary education, we're not expecting them to get GCSE outcomes, but then they go on to college and they do their GCSE resits. So we do have young people getting there, but it is unfortunately outside of the performance measures that we have to report on.
Okay, do we have any further questions? Right, that's great. Thank you very much, Tara. Thank you very much, Sarah. I move that the panel receives and endorses the report and that we are satisfied with assurances received in relation to measures that did not meet the target, and I ask that our comments and recommendations as these emerged in our debate are passed on to the executive portfolio holder and leading officers for their consideration and further action. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Okay, that's agreed then. Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 8, Fostering Quarterly Performance Report, Quarter 4. This item on pages 35 to 54 of the pack, the report aims to provide an overview of the fostering service performance for Quarter 4, January-March 2023. The report also will be presented the report also will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service, Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the details contained in this quarterly report and endorse the report as an accurate overview of the fostering service for Quarter 4. Thank you, Deborah.
Good morning, Mr Chairman, and those in attendance today. The report is indeed for Quarter 4, which covers the period from January to the end of March 2023. And in many respects is not dissimilar to the 3 earlier reports that I presented in this year, where the work of the foster carers, their fostering families and the officers within the fostering service and beyond continue to support the sterling efforts of those volunteers that care for children in care in Lincolnshire. Our efforts are principally in relation to supporting the fostering households, but also looking to recruit and retain our existing carer workforce. I don't want to dwell on the issue, but I do need to point out that it is a very, very difficult climate out there. And for those of you that are familiar with sitting in corporate parenting will know what the marketplace has been and continues to be like. And what that manifests into is difficulties at times finding the right people for the right number of children within our county. So there is an accepted reliance on having to use external providers as and when necessary. Just to give that some context, what we would always say is that actually we want our children in Lincolnshire with Lincolnshire people who can support them not only in their homes with their love, kindness and generosity, but also to enable children to have their much needed good education, their health care and their opportunities to maintain those integral and important links with their connected persons or family networks via family time / contact. What continues and has continued during this period has been our efforts and ambition to recruit more fostering households. I think Tara Jones has already mentioned this morning that we don't stand still. We are constantly trying to recruit foster carers, and we know that actually one of our best strategies is word of mouth and reputation. So we pride ourselves on supporting, supervising and doing all the regulatory matters that we can do to support fostering households. It's quite right in saying that this period of time has seen a slight drop in the number of children in care, and in some respects that is helpful, but it doesn't actually detract from what we have to keep our minds and our focus upon. As I've said, our local branding is very much around local choice, being a local choice fostering agency for local people. And I think, you know, we've continued with our targeted approach for those hard to place children, sibling groups, looking for people who are able to provide longer term and more permanent arrangements for children. But that's not to say that anybody who steps forward, who is able and is assessed rigorously to undertake this fostering role is not welcome. We absolutely open our arms to people and, you know, want them to be available to care for our children who have very complex needs but are all individuals in their own right. I think it's fair to say that we have performed well in this period, and our final end of year number of approvals has been 30, which may not sound particularly high, but actually is a conversion rate of 12%, which is significantly higher than the national average. We are in a competitive market, and we never forget that. We have continued to be creative in terms of being out there, being visible, being heard, being seen, having pop-up stalls. We've been adventurous in terms of doing evening and daytime for those people in employment and not in employment, those people with children, not with children, so that we try and capture the whole market, single and couples, so that we can actually, you know, develop our fostering households to meet those very different needs of people. And, you know, foster carers come from all sorts of backgrounds like we do. So actually, you know, we have to be out there so we catch their eye, so to speak. I think what we've also done is listen to what feedback has come through the annual survey, so that, you know, we've heard what you've had to say, and we use it in terms of developing, reviewing our service and our service priorities, our recruitment strategy, our retention strategy, and our strategies continue to be reviewed so that we can ensure that we are, you know, absolutely in the marketplace and at the forefront of advertising. And of course, there are no boundaries for anybody. So we are not only competing against other local authorities that border our geographical area, but we also have a number of fostering agencies from the independent sector that are businesses that operate within the confines of Lincolnshire. So it is tough. We know, thank you. We know that the economic climate that we are operating in has had and continues to have an impact for fostering families. And obviously one of the key elements of feedback was in relation to foster care allowances, which, you know, don't want to launch too far forward, but we have listened to and we have addressed very comprehensively, given what the key messages that were also coming out of central government. I think that the momentum in fostering households has been tremendous, really, because they too have been in the very same places as we have in terms of enduring COVID, coming back from COVID, recovering their lives and taking those children that are a really precious commodity with them. And, you know, whilst there's been mention this morning about placements and placement stability, I've continued to be humbled by people's commitment not only to stick with those children, but also welcome new children into their homes and into their families, and most importantly, into their hearts. You know, it's no mean feat, really. And I think that we had a permanence event that took place in January of 2023, where we invited foster carers that we know, foster carers that are coming through the process, to ask them to think about longer term commitments known as permanence and family finding. And actually, as a consequence of that event in January, we have successfully been able to match and support 6 children in their longer term arrangements that provide them with greater stability, greater security, and potentially lifelong. So it's fantastic, really, that we have used some very sophisticated, updated profiles of children, matched them with foster carers, use the Value in Care toolkit to enable and look at that strengths-based approach so that actually we can have the right children with the right people. And I'm not saying that that's easy or that we always get it right, but our ambitions and our desire is absolutely there. I think that coupled with our social media campaign, our training and development opportunities for foster carers, that continues to be warmly and well received. I cannot underestimate the level of support, of assistance, of listening, of holding somebody else's hand metaphorically, who are coming into fostering, that they get from foster carers who have been doing it for 12 months, 12 years or longer. The fostering community support each other extremely well, and again, something that we're really proud of. They have their informal groups, they have the WhatsApp, they have the Facebook, but also they have their unique relationships with their supervising social workers that have a regulatory function, but it's also about guidance and supporting people through their journey. What I would say is that as critical as it is that we recruit and we retain foster carers to care for any of our children in care, our forefront approach is always to think about family finding for children who are coming into foster care when it's been deemed and assessed as not being, for them not being able to remain within their immediate family. And what I mean by that is where we are planning for children to come in, we always consider their family network, their connections, who they're familiar with, how safe is it. And this quarter we have done a further 36 assessments, including what we call Regulation 24 placements, where they are specifically approved foster carers for a specific child or group of children. And they are their assessments are presented at panel in the same way as a Form F assessment for anybody wanting to become a foster carer, and those people were approved and become foster carers in exactly the same way. So they adhere to the same regulations, the same national minimum standards in every way as any other foster carer. And what we are very mindful of is within the review that was being completed by Josh McAllister, and the implementation plans will be moving across the country in due course, is that one of the pillars of the work and recommendations is about how much consideration is given to exploring family networks. And I'm really pleased to say that we were quite reassured when we read the report that actually Lincolnshire are ahead of the game in that respect. We, for a number of years now, have always thought about looking at who does the child or children know who can safely parent them in the absence of their birth parents or other carers. So what we call as kinship is exactly that. Remains a big part of our daily job in fostering, and secures placements for children that are, one, meet their needs, two, are local, and thirdly, there were people who they know and are familiar with. There are a number of cost benefits to that, of course, which, we wholeheartedly kind of embrace, really, where we can. What I would say is that the final quarter of this year has been quite a rewarding one in a number of ways, really. We've made plans and preparations for the annual fostering event, which took place in April 2023. We have had a good number of approval of fostering households. We have seen some foster carers leave the service, and that is usually owing to their career coming to an end, change in personal circumstance. And we also have to remember that our demographic is carers of an older age, so sometimes they've run out of absolute energy to do what is an immense job on top of but working and having their own families to care for too. So it is probably one of the most selfless acts that I can possibly talk about. And I've never been a foster carer, but I take my hat off to those people that put themselves forward, go through what is a really, really enduring kind of assessment process, but also maintain good quality care and safe links for those children. And we often know that that is lifelong and not just for the time that they're under 18. Just by means of conclusion, we've also seen a kind of a static number of young people staying in staying put arrangements, and invariably they are planned really from the age of 16 and 3 months, where we start talking about pathway plans and thinking about what young people want to happen when they reach 18, and in some instances it's well before that time. However, what we have been able to do this quarter is maintain that number of young people who are in staying put arrangements in education, employment and training, and with only 6 young people who have endured physical and mental health issues not being able to work or be in employment. However, that is reviewed by the supervising social worker for the foster carers, but also the work in conjunction with Barnardo's, given that those young people are in leaving care arrangements. I think it's safe to say that this last quarter has been a positive one for the fostering service, positive one for the fostering community. We've been very active in terms of recruitment and retention, and for securing permanence and essentially matching the right children with the right carers. But like everything, the job is not done. We don't stand still and we keep moving forward. But as the head of service for fostering, I'm really proud of our fostering households that have endured another difficult kind of quarter, difficult economic times, but actually, do you know what? They're stuck with us and they're stuck with the children they care for. So I just want to say formal thanks to all the foster carers of Lincolnshire that I'm very proud to lead, really. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Deborah. Anne, I'm going to ambush you. Any thoughts or comments you'd like to make?
It's nice to hear the success of the family finding event because myself and my partner were part of that delivering because we've got a young lady moved in with us who has been in residential, and so to talk people through, actually, this is a fantastic process to go through. So it's really nice to hear that you've had ongoing success from that. And your appreciation of what we do. It is very challenging. We've also had a young lady who's been with us on staying put, although as of last week is no longer because she's finished a degree. So we've been supporting at very many levels through fostering, and we do feel supported by the service. There are challenges, most definitely, but every family, every household has those challenges. We just keep doing what we can. So.
Thank you, Anne. I know every time I get involved, whatever event I go to, I come away proud to be involved, but so thankful for what foster carers do. As Deborah said, I'm not sure I could do it. Well, not nowadays anyway. But thank you very much. Yes, Casco.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm sure we all echo the comments you made, Deborah, in terms of thanking, I'm sure as a committee we all thank all the foster carers across the county for the work that they do in supporting these individuals. You know, and forgive me if this information is in the report, you know, have we got areas across the county that we are really struggling for in terms of foster carers, and areas where perhaps we need to do more in terms of promotion for those specific areas? That would be my first question. I suppose the other one is, you know, we know this is a national challenge, and I suppose with your professional background, it'd be interesting to hear if there are any sort of radical things we could do that might improve the situation, things that we haven't thought about, or things we could potentially trial as a county to try and encourage more people to become foster carers.
Okay, thank you. We acknowledge we're a massive county and we cover the whole of our county from kind of east to west, north to south, if you like. There are no particular geographical areas that we're struggling. I think we are seen and we are visible, and we're very, very mindful that we are heard and we're available to the different communities that we have. That's why we have a complete blend and mix of being visible in public places, being very vibrant in terms of social media, and our feedback. And interestingly, because of when foster carers either contact us about interest or they're not sure what fostering's about, we always make sure that we take the information so we can do some analysis about how did you get our number, why have you chosen us, how quick did we get, you know, we explore all of that. So I think it's fair to say that we have, when we look at where our foster carer households are, we have quite a high percentage on the east coast and within the kind of West Lindsey, Lincoln, North Kesteven district. Similarly, we have less, but we still have a good number in South Kesteven and the other side of the county. So I think it's fair to say that most of our contacts are generated through social media. We do quite a lot of work with the digital team so that we can be clear about how many hits we've had, what the profile of those people who are inquiring, what their demographic is. So we use all of that data to inform and, you know, give us greater intelligence really about where we need to be and who we need to target. Just to kind of conclude on that, what I would say is that within the auspices of the regulations and good practice and safeguarding and all of that, you know, our criteria is pretty clear and it's there and it's present for people to read and people to see. We also encourage our foster carers to speak to other people who may be interested in fostering, because we do a kind of, you know, a reward for them to kind of encourage people to step through the door, so to speak. So we are all over. We've used the back of buses. We've used our colleagues within our digital team to get us out there. We take any opportunity to go onto the radio. So because we know that our competitors are doing that as well. To just go on to your second point, I think that we have used a lot of research from Fostering Network, who are in one of the national charities. All of our fostering households, whether they're approved for mainstream carers or approved under the kinship for a specific child, we pay their annual subscription to Fostering Network, which basically gives them lots of information and support as and when they need it. We use a lot of their information, because they are such a kind of a leading light in recruitment and retention, to look at their recommendations and strategies for recruiting people into fostering. I have to say we do have quite an ambitious marketing team, and we don't stand still. So we knew that actually because we are looking at recruiting people, getting people, inviting people to be interested, it wasn't somebody necessarily with a social work qualification that we needed. It was somebody who was in marketing. So we've just literally started, we're in our campaign for this new financial year. We've used some of the literature and some of the ideas from Fostering Network, but we've also gone out to our own foster carers to say, how do you think it needs to work? You stepped forward once, you know, why did you come to Lincolnshire? What did you do? And I think, interestingly, it's sometimes for some people, it's not about the glossy magazines from the independent sector. It's about we want to put something back into our own community. And that's why we very much ride on the branding of local people for local children, because people want to put back into this good county. And that is something that we want to capitalise on. So if anybody has got any other ideas, or we will happily embrace them. We use foster carers as part of our recruitment as well. We use Caring to Learn champions. So actually people can hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Because I can stand up and I can talk, as you've probably realised this morning. But actually, it's about hearing it from somebody who's got that lived experience. And that is absolutely invaluable.
Yes, Tara.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to the second question around kind of any creative national issues. So as you know, the social care reforms came out of Josh McAllister's care review. That's got a huge focus on fostering, not only foster carers, but the kinship agenda. One area which is innovative is there's a region that's piloting with the support of the Department for Education a regional recruitment campaign. There are also suggestions about kind of testing and piloting an approach similar to our regional adoption agency, Family Adoption Links. So looking at if we can replicate that in terms of foster carer recruitment and assessment. So, you know, there are things coming out of the social care reform agenda, and certainly the pathfinding authorities will be part of that test and learn approach to then scale up and cascade nationally that learning.
Okay, great. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you very much, and Deborah, thank you for fighting on through your croaky throat and for all your good work, and indeed all your foster carers. I wonder if you'll help me. There are two sentences, paragraphs at the beginning of the report, and I want to read them, and then I want to sort of insert my questions into those paragraphs. So it says, at the end of Q4, the number of children in care had fallen to 723 from 759. That's a fall of 37. At the same time, those placed with independent fostering agencies slightly decreased to 45. I don't understand, if you like, the relevance of that, or if that's we've placed them in independent fostering agencies. During this quarter, 51 children became children in care for the first time. Of these, 28 were placed in foster care and kinship care arrangements. What happened to the other of those 33 children? This compares to 83 children exiting care owing to their age, permanent arrangements being sought with other carers, or exiting care and returning to family based on current unfavourable assessment. So I'd like to know the numerical breakdown of those 83 between those three categories. Therefore, the overall numbers have increased by 37 children, which doesn't arithmetically seem to add up with all those other numbers, but percentage of children in foster placement is 68%. So what's happening to the other 32%? So it's just, I read it, it's very nicely written, but I don't understand it.
Okay, so during the period of January to March, I think my statement was that the number of children in care overall had decreased, which, you know, is a positive, but obviously we know that also it fluctuates daily and throughout the course of a year. When children are coming in to care, invariably we would always look for their family network. to see who within their family who would be able to meet the needs of that child or children. So we refer to them as kinship. Sometimes, though, you know, there is no family, they're not safe within their family, so they do have to come into foster care. But there's also considerations that have to be given in every instance to the child's experienced trauma, what their needs are, whether we can match and marry their needs, whether or not they need something that's of greater experience or residential. So actually, I don't have the individual breakdown of all of those children and what happened to each and every one of those children that came in during that period. What I am able to say is that as many children coming in, some go out because they attain the age of 18, or they go home on assessed plans, or also we have children who are within the court proceedings that may go for either adoption or special guardianship orders, child arrangements orders. So there's a number of different routes to enter care as there is to exit care. So that specific number of children, I can't give you every single individual breakdown here today. I can, go away and look at that for you. But actually, what it's saying is that the percentage of children in foster placements still remains relatively high. So, we look to foster children in foster placements if they're not able to be within a kinship fostering arrangement at the very first kind of instance, or at some point within their infancy of coming into care, or at later stages when we've actually assessed somebody and said, actually, this child is able to remain in their family in a safe setting that we can support. So it's very difficult, Councillor Matthews, to give you the specifics, if you like, but it's generally a good news story in terms of less number of children in care at the start. Of those children that came into care, there was a significant proportion, over 50% of them went into foster placements. And as I said this earlier on, there is an accepted reliance on external provision. So if we're not able to place with our own foster carers, we have to consider what are the options for the child or the children. So we would always look at home first.
I am absolutely not doubting your commitment to the principles of where you'd go and kinship. But it says here, 51 children became children care first, 28 were placed in foster care and kinship care arrangements. I'm just asking, how many of those were foster care? How many of those were kinship care arrangements? This compares to 83 children exiting care owing to their age, permanent arrangements with other carers, or exiting care and returning to family based on favourable assessment. 3 categories that you specify here. And I'd like to know of those 83, is it 40, 40 and 3, or is it 33, 33 and 17? So it's that breakdown, because surely you must be tracking that record to know where they're going. I know you've got throughput. And the other thing that I'm intrigued with, because last time you spoke very well, since then I've been hearing the radio and the television saying, take up fostering, it's great, we pay you loads of money and it's a rewarding thing and you can do it in addition to your other job. So there seems to be a trend that our service is being challenged by commercial opportunity from others. And I wonder if that's you're referring to as independent fostering agencies here. So I just simply don't know how the numbers fit the jargon. So I'm not questioning your principles or the way you go about your work. I'm just asking if we can have a breakdown of numbers so we can see the direction of travel.
Debbie, Tara, I don't know, between you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Matthews. We absolutely robust, and I have that data I can provide following this corporate parenting panel. So what we do is we track the starters, their age cohorts, their destination, so whether they're placed fostering, kinship, residential, etc. And we track those starters through the age cohorts right through to our 16 or late entries. We also track our leavers. what age they're leaving, where's their destination, what order, etc. So that 83, I can give you that data. I can't give you off the top of my head here, but I can certainly send that after corporate parenting panel today. We also include that data in our Children in Care annual report, which breaks it down for the year, our starters and leavers. So we use that information as well to plot exactly what we need to do in terms of our sufficiency strategy. Hence why the Children in Care transformation, we knew that there was a cohort that were going directly into out-of-county residential provision and a younger cohort. So we were able to target our sufficiency plan in terms of the increase of our residential estate. Again, some of those children exiting are exiting through the court. So the court proceedings are ending in a special guardianship arrangement, which means that then they are no longer a child in care. And again, adoption. So various reasons, but we do have that data absolutely and use it in terms of developing the service and particularly our sufficiency strategy.
Okay, Colin. Yeah. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. Nice, easy questions for you this time, Deborah. How long does it take from somebody applying to become a fosterer to being accepted, not having a child, because the child might not be there for fostering, but how long does it take from me saying I want to be a fosterer to being accepted? The second question is, has that length of time reduced over recent years? Have we been able to streamline it and still feel satisfied that we cover all the safety angles for the child? And my third and final question is, how many people apply to become fosterers that then decide that it's not for them during the process of being accepted? And do we ask those, if there are any, do we ask them for reasons why, so that we can be as slick as we possibly can by and still maintaining all the safety aspects? Thank you.
Okay. In terms of fostering approval, so every fostering agency, whether it's a local authority or an independent fostering provider, have to work to the same government guidance, legislation and the time frames. So we have what's called a stage 2 process. So you've got stage 1 and a stage 2, and you are supposed to be assessed and at panel within 8 months. Okay? From the point where you register your interest. We do have a lot of people who make contact either through email or phone up. We have quite a sleek kind of timescale to get back to people, because we know it's like anything. You ring somebody and they don't come back to you, you move on to the next one. So we're very, very focused on having that very early conversation, getting back to people. And once they register their interest, we are out there kind of straight away, getting on with the stage 1 and stage 2 bit. That's not to say that it always takes 8 months. It can take up to 8 months. So our best endeavour from the point where they make their initial inquiry, which is just a telephone call or an email or speaking with somebody, the clock doesn't start ticking until they actually say, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna proceed. So we respond very quickly to that, and I'm pleased to say that most, if not all, of our assessments are actually at panel within 8 months, sometimes sooner, dependent. And in some respects, what we do throughout the assessment, with stage 1 is much more around the checks, so references, medicals, police, probation, all the statutory checks, so we're clear who these people are. We've obviously done all of their identification and such like. The stage 2 part of the process is where we actually do the assessment, and we work using the core and BAF paperwork and framework to complete those assessments. They're rigorous, they're detailed, and it's about taking people through that journey to become a foster carer in in a highly supportive way, but also being really clear what information we want to elicit, what they're going to bring to this, what their experience has or hasn't been, supporting them through that by introducing them to a hub link, somebody who is already a foster carer, because we understand that the process it's tough. Those people who choose not to proceed, sometimes people contact us and say, can I foster but I haven't got a spare bedroom? Well, that's an automatic, we can't entertain that. But I think what we have done over a number of years is dispel some of those myths and look at embracing difference, embracing people who want to step forward, who have got something to give to fostering. Where people perhaps have started and don't want to continue, that is ordinarily owing to a significant life event. Our experience is that people do think long and hard about whether they want to do this, and we actually thank them for that, because what we don't want is people coming into fostering who only want to do it for kind of 5 minutes really. And that's where I think you'll find that actually lots of people who do eventually go into fostering stay in it. People don't have an automatic entitlement to become approved. It's quite a rigorous process with the assessment, attending fostering panel, and then it has to be approved by the agency decision maker. So it's the checks and balances are there. We have streamlined the assessment, very much so. So, we actually start asking people to think about their chronology, their life history, all of the information that we're going to be kind of talking about as part of their kind of what we used to call field study, really. So a bit like some homework for them to do. So it's very factual, but it's also scenario based and talking through with people what are their motivations, what is it they want to achieve, what is their preferred age range of children. It's a long process. That's six months of of stage 2, which can be condensed and is a kind of concertina of different elements to a very comprehensive assessment. And just to finally say that when people do express an interest or register an interest, they do tend to proceed to the final bit. What we do prior to them registering an interest is what we call their inquiry, where we do go out, we go and see people and talk to them about fostering and what it entails. And it's ordinarily at that stage where they say, actually we're not sure it is for us, or actually we want to adopt, or actually, it's probably not the right time. So we do capture that information and again, use that as intelligence as part of our recruitment and our sufficiency strategy. So if that answers your question.
Any further questions? No, that's great. Thank you very much once again, Deborah. Very thorough answers and report. I move that we receive and endorse the report and record our thanks for the overall efforts of the fostering service, whilst acknowledging continuous pressures on placement availability. You've clearly achieved to place most children within the Lincolnshire County Council approved foster carers community who undeniably put every effort in achieving positive, child-focused outcomes. I also ask that our views and feedback in relation to Q4 outcomes as captured are shared with officers and relevant portfolio holders in support of your efforts. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Then that is agreed. Thank you very much. So we now move on to agenda item 9, Lincolnshire Leaving Care Annual Report 2022-23. This item on pages 55 to 64 of the pack. This is the annual report provided by Bernardo's on behalf of Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service, April 2022 to March 2023. The report demonstrates the performance of Lincolnshire's Leaving Care Service regarding care experience to young people. The report will be presented by Lisa Adams, Programme Manager of Bernardo's. The panel is invited to review and comment on the contents of this report, which are relevant and provided to information on the performance of the leaving care service. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk you through the work that's been undertaken, like you said, from April 2022 to March 23. As you're aware, Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service is delivered by Bernardo, so we work very much in partnership with the local authority and are under fairly strict contract management arrangements in relation to that. We have regular monthly updates and quarterly meetings, and we have the link into the local authority by the corporate parenting manager and the head of regulated services. Within this report, I intend to talk through some issues around accommodation that's offered, looking at the education, employment and training offer that we have for our young people. I want to talk a little bit about our care leavers cohort, and panel members asked for some information about location, about where Lincolnshire Leaving Care young people live. I want to talk a little bit about mental health services for our care experienced young people and some new opportunities that are on the horizon that we're developing at the moment. So when looking at maintaining suitable and safe accommodation, Lincolnshire young people aged 16 to 25 have a number of supported sort of living options as well as independent options that they can look at. And within that, Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service offer a supported lodging scheme. So moving on really from some of the foster care information that we've heard previously, we run a supported lodgings panel that is very akin to the fostering panel, where we look at any new assessments or we review our current cohort of supported lodgings providers. To provide a supported lodgings placement, basically, on a very basic level, you are renting a room from a family. But I guess it's a lot more complex than that. It's absolutely about embracing a young person into your home and sharing your family. And it has some brilliant outcomes. We have 17 providers at the moment that can provide up to sort of 30 types of placement. So that includes some assessment beds, so some potentially 16 and 17-year-olds who are coming into the care of the local authority where we're wanting to test out their independent skills, what type of accommodation they should be offered. And then we offer some placements up to 21, between those ages of 16 and 21. But there's always then that option of keeping in touch, which we heard about for our foster carers really, where we've got an awful lot of Lincolnshire young people who are even up into their 30s now, who are still going back to their supported lodgings providers for catch-ups, for Christmas, for birthdays, and are absolutely embraced as part of that family. So we've continued to run our supported lodging panel. It's a multi-agency panel. Corporate parenting manager sits on that panel, as do other representatives from the local authority and the virtual school. We are seeing some new regulations come in for our 16 and 17-year-old supported accommodation options really, where we are registering those services. They will be under the eye of Ofsted, as are our foster placements, and we're currently working through that process as is the local authority at this stage. We need to register those provisions by October this year with Ofsted, so that's like a piece of work that we are working in partnership with the local authority on for some of our supported lodgings placements. What I would say is that generally it'll be all of our providers who register for that, because sometimes that 16 and 17-year-olds can drop into any type of placement really, whether it's a respite or it's an assessment bed. So like I said, we're on with that sort of provision at the moment. The head of service talked about our offer for our in relation to education, employment and training. We have a very small team of specialist workers who work alongside our leaving care workers to try and look at options for our care experienced young people who are not in education, employment or training. We absolutely track that cohort. We know who those young people are and we know what the plan is for those young people. We try to do very tailored work because we found that that works best. And I guess understanding that cohort, understanding the reasons why young people are not engaging is key. And we heard from the virtual school this morning about that, and we take a similar approach really. We absolutely know what that cohort is, and we have a range of different workers we can try and plug that young person into to try and help them achieve some level of education and employment. But for some young people, that's not attainable, and it would be wrong of me to say that it is, but there can still be a very positive and an aspirational outcome for that young person. We've seen absolute dividends playing by introducing what we call the wellness worker. They're placed within that post, and again, they just do some very, I dare to say low key, but it has some good outcomes. So it's about that phone call in the morning that says, what are you doing today? Have you remembered you've got that appointment? I'm going to come and collect you and pick you up at it. And we're finding that a number of our young people sort of benefit but need that approach as well. And certainly the corporate parenting manager will be able to say, you know, with the new staying connected funding, we're looking to increase that type of worker into the service, but also into other teams as well, because we recognise that, achieving a degree for some of our young people, achieving employment for some of our young people isn't doable. We've also introduced, though, a new what we call Success in 6 programme, where we have got some young people who are saying training and school isn't for me, but actually I want a job. And so we're trying hard to target those young people, look at some work opportunities that they want, and then do a really a very sort of compressed and condensed piece of work with them that hopefully holds them in holds them in employment. So that scheme's just started at the moment, but is working well. We're looking at 15 young people going through that scheme sort of this year. Looking at our sort of care leavers cohort, really, again, I provided information on the report which just says where our young people are, where they are in the country. All of those young people aged sort of 18 to 21 are getting what we call generally a full leaving care service, so they're getting visits at least 8 weekly. I've got to say, though, there's an awful lot of our young people who are getting visits an awful lot more regularly than that, and it's just very much based on individual need. So hopefully, like I said, if there's any questions around geography, I can maybe help with that. Over the last financial year, we've also really extended out our participation offer to young people. We have a dedicated participation worker. We're trying to develop, we've done some small group work. We have engaged in a Bernardo's project called the Triangles Project, which has seen 4 young people engage in some work and set some outcomes that they wanted to achieve and some outcomes for service. We've done some art events. We've some young people at the Fab Awards. We obviously had an awful lot of care experience young people at the Fab Awards. We've had some local employers come and work with some of our young people around nail art, and one of those has been taken on because of that. We produced a film last year that helped look at transition for young people, and all of that was just done very much hand in hand with either individual or groups of care experienced young people. I guess what Bernardo's is also able to do, and I suppose it's that what I call the added value bit of the contract really, but where we've been able to work with some teams internally within Bernardo's, but also create some partnerships with local providers, to benefit care experienced young people. So that's included some home packs from IKEA, because Bernardo's have a partnership with them. We've created a great partnership with Lincoln, Tesco's, the big Tesco's, where I can't tell you how much food comes in every week. We try and make sure that gets around the county though as well. So if it's perishable, it's slightly different, but an awful lot of the other stuff that isn't perishable, we make sure it goes through all of the different offices, so it doesn't just stay in Lincoln. We've had some donations and continue to get donations from some local churches, but that's again about the team managers and the leaving care workers going and visiting and spreading the word really around Lincolnshire young people. We do some cookery courses, and again we've had that funded independently certainly for our unaccompanied asylum seekers in the south of the county, and again partnerships with people like Vodafone. So all that sort of happened during this past year. And I guess just moving on then about the mental health offer that, again, I think has developed quite significantly over the past financial year. In partnership with the local authority and health colleagues, we've introduced the sort of a mental health wellbeing worker and also a wellness worker. So although the mental health worker sits within health, they work solely with care experienced young people, and they're a great way of the leaving care services accessing and finding the way through health provision costs. It is really complicated, and it really has helped with that. If we have an incident where a care experienced young person harms or self-harms, they will automatically be referred through to the wellness worker. So again, we make sure we have a very coordinated approach. And we've also been able to deliver in-house training, both by the wellness worker, but also we brought in the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, which is the RAP training that everybody in service has benefited from, alongside partners, corporate parenting managers benefited from that training, and that's been rolled out to care experienced young people for the first time this year as well. I've provided details of, I guess, post holders within the team just so that you can see the spread of workers. But some of the teams are small. It's, you know, I wouldn't want you to think we have, in relation to supported lodgings, there's 2 workers to cover county-wide. So it's not a big infrastructure. But again, some of the marketings is what we try to replicate that the local authority do. So we do try and get into media, we do try and get onto the radio, we do try and encourage, but yeah, it's a much smaller team. And we are still looking to develop that service really. It's one of the areas that we're looking at for this year. So that really is the content of the report, but I'm more than happy to take any specific questions about particular areas.
Okay, that's great. Do we have any questions? No. Seemingly, oh, sorry, Colin.
I've got no question about the report. It's for my own education. Towards the end of the report, you talk about your relationship with LPFT. In my councillor work, I know that there's an individual that was in an LPFT establishment, but is now not in an LPFT establishment, but is somewhere else. At phenomenal expense, I must say, I've learned. Are they a young person in care or leaving care? Not that individual case, but how does it work if someone is inside a mental health institution where they're housed? Are they your responsibility, our responsibility, or the parents, or their own? It's just for my own information, sorry. No, and it's a good report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No, thank you for that. No, if a young person is within a residential setting because of their mental health, generally the 16 to 18-year-olds, they will be, I'm saying they are under the care of a social worker and the local authority, and the corporate parenting manager may be able to just tell you about funding for those. In relation to the 18-plussers, they would be funded via health because they would be in a regulated sort of hospital, potentially hospital type setting. So we do have some young people who have been subject to the mental health assessments and have been detained, as it were, in hospital or adult provision. Again, we've got some young people that we're working with who have got an adult care package, and adult services would be paying for that package. It isn't coming out of the leaving care budget.
Thank you very much. That was my question. In fact, it's not a Lincolnshire County Council funded provision. It's another authority, and as I say, but that the parents of this individual live within Lincolnshire and are expressing concern about the arrangements, that's all. So I don't want to, it's not interested in my case study, but I was intrigued at how complex it was.
Tara, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So in terms of a child or young person being in, for example, a Tier 4 provision, which is a health provision, they are not necessarily children in care or children or care leavers. These can be children who are living at home with their parents where there is no statutory children's services involvement, or there may be some lower level involvement. The children and family might be supported, for example, by Team Around the Child or Child in Need. So it's dependent on each circumstance. They could be children in care, or they could be children that are living with their families with no statutory involvement from social care.
Okay, do we have any further questions? Lisa, thank you very much. I seem to remember Tesco's being mentioned quite heavily last time. It's great that you've got some good partnerships, but Tesco's especially seem to be very good. Be there other supermarkets in the area or
Yeah,
not.
indeed. No, indeed. It was, they're a wonderful resource, and dare I say, we had a fabulous delivery the day of the Ofsted inspection. So Ofsted inspectors also got to see the chaos that reigns when that happens. But yeah, no, they are. It's a wonderful, and like I said, thousands of pounds worth of goods our care experience young people get because of that partnership. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great. Is
Thank
that both Tesco's main stores, or does it like just a central bit?
No, it's basically it's based on a relationship that one of our leaving care workers just went knocking on the door, and we found the right person in the store at Tesco's at Lincoln, and that's where it stemmed from.
That's great, great. So thank you very much for the report. I move that the report be received, reflecting on the progress and achievements during the 12-month period for Lincolnshire Leaving Care Service. I ask that our satisfaction be recorded. I also ask that our comments from the discussion as recorded are taken under consideration by partners, officers and relevant portfolio holders. Can I ask that you raise your hand if you are in agreement? Then that is agreed. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 10, supported accommodation, England Regulation 2023. This item on page 65 to 72 of the pack and provides the panel with an overview of the implementation to the supported accommodation England Regulations 2023 and Lincolnshire County Council preparation and update regarding the implementation of these as registered provision from October 2023. The report will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service, Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care. The panel is invited to consider the Council's implementation of the supported accommodation England regulations detailed in the appendix of this report. So over to you again, Deborah. Thank you.
I'm going to throw you off beam now, because I'm actually going to hand over to Andy Morris, because there's been a redefining of roles. So Andy is now going to be Head of Service for Leaving Care. So actually makes sense if he delivers this report.
I just need to say, I didn't mention it because I didn't want to embarrass Andy, but I will do now. Now you allow me. Andy has been promoted. He's no longer a corporate parenting manager. They've given him more work to do. So onward and upwards. Thank you, Andy.
But there will be another corporate parenting manager coming soon, so we're going to keep them there. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. I'll try and keep it fairly succinct, because I've been trying to lead on some of the development of these regulations, how we're implementing, but Deborah's got to take full credit for the report. So I'll just kind of take some of the highlights and then hopefully take some questions about how this is developing. So Lincolnshire County Council and Commission Services has been providing semi-independent and supported living options for 16 and 17-year-olds for a number of years, and the government made the decision a couple of years ago to bring in some regulations around these semi-independent living options. You would have seen maybe some of the media headlines around some of these provisions and some of the regulators' concerns about them, but you know, you've seen our own in-house semi-independent living options in Rowston and Denton for a number of years, and it's about how we're bringing those two pieces of accommodation and some of the commission providers accommodation in line with the regulations. So the introduction of the regulations outlines the standards that all providers and public sector organisations have to follow and be inspected against. That would include physical surroundings of the accommodation, as well as how children and people are kept safe and their mental and emotional well-being is supported by these provisions. So the regulation's been coming in now for a couple of years, and we've been working through this, and there's going to be an introduction of quality standards that will give a clear framework about how these semi-independent living options will be regulated by Ofsted, and the framework ensures that young people are supported in high quality supported living, and they make a very clear definition in the regulations between the difference between care, which is our children's homes where they provide care, and how we provide caring support. And it's recognising that 16 and 17-year-olds and young people transitioning towards adulthood need a different type of level of support and intervention from providers and from the local authorities, prepare them for adulthood and not just care for them as a child. But the standards set out really clear outlines about what this should look like. So Lincolnshire County Council within their own right, we have our own existing supported accommodation options in Rowston and Denton, and they sit under my remit, and these for 16 and 17-year-old young people in care. And this continues to be a valuable resource, and we've got one vacancy that's very, very soon to be filled by another young person who's been given the opportunity to come and visit the accommodation, then live with us for a couple of years in preparation for their movement into adulthood. And through these provisions, of course, we link with the Leaving Care Service. There's a whole kind of journey towards independence for these young people from 16. Lincolnshire's also had a number of commission services with our NACRO colleagues and Locate and a couple of other providers we work with to provide supported living for unaccompanied young people and young people who are unable to live with their families. But all of these provisions will have to be registered with Ofsted by October the 28th. After that date, the local authority will not be able to use any provision that is not expressed an intent, or at least gone through the SC1 and SC2 process. That's right, isn't it? Because we're going through that now. To register, Tara will be the nominated person in the council, and I'll be the registered home manager within the local authority. And we're working with all our providers to ensure that those providers who provide placements at county and in county for our 16 and 17-year-olds also meet those regulatory standards so that we're satisfied. So there's a piece of work ongoing at the moment that's being led by myself and our colleagues in commissioning to work with those providers to make sure we're supporting each other to explore this new landscape of regulation, because they are similar to, but also quite different to, those regulations for children's homes. Because what Ofsted have managed to do is really consider that these are different options, and the needs of 16 and 17-year-old young people moving into adulthood are very different to a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old living within a residential home. So just very briefly, the standards outline protection standards, accommodation standards, support standards, not necessarily care, a really clear outline about what a good statement of purpose looks like for these provisions, and has requirements around management and a workforce plan. And a lot of Lincolnshire County Council has always held itself to a high level of accountability for our semi-independent living options for 16, 17-year-olds. For example, we chose to become Reg 44 inspected, Regulation 44 inspected, like the children's homes are. So we opened ourselves up through choice to that kind of level of scrutiny. But this is about how we support providers outside of the local authority to bring themselves up or ensure that they're meeting the standards as set out by the regulator. There's been some changes within our own in-house options where we've looked at the kind of the structure of the staffing to make sure it's sufficiently robust, and we've introduced a new semi-independent living manager to oversee the options with me, and also a residential care officer level 3 to introduce some additional supervisory and support capacity within the homes. So that's just a little whistle-stop tour about what's happened within our semi-independent living option in Lincolnshire, but also a bit of a description about how we're working with our colleagues and partners out there with NACRO and some of those other organisations to support our young people, about how we're making sure that they're up to standard as well and registered, or got that expression of intent to be registered with Ofsted by October 28th, to make sure that our young people that currently live with these providers can stay with them and you know, looking back at some of the performance data this morning, sustain sufficiency and sustain stability within their placements. So that's it very briefly, but I'll welcome any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? They're letting you off easy, aren't they? Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Andy. Oh, sorry, Colin. He is, isn't he?
I'm not doing very well here. So this is great news. Does it change the nature of the report you're going to make next time? Because presumably there are inspection criteria and regulation criteria, and we'll be able to present our performance against those since they'll be objective. So I'm just wondering if it changes the way we future report against framework measures, whereas at the moment there weren't any.
Yeah, I mean, the provisions will be inspected, of course, as well by Ofsted. So that's going to be on a 3-year cycle. And once we've got the homes set and registered and we've got everything in place, we can bring a further report back probably towards the end of the year or early next year to update about how that registration process has gone, and bring you up to speed with some of the changes made within the homes, but also some of those commission providers to give you assurance that they've been registered and inspected to the same standard as well.
Yeah, and Denton and Rouston in particular will also be included in the report that you receive around the Reg 44 visits, which you receive, I think it's on a 6-monthly basis. So it will include how Denton and Rouston are performing against the new quality standards for supported accommodation. In terms of performance measures, again, supported accommodation, you know, that will be, you know, in terms of reporting on care leavers in suitable accommodation. So there will be some links to the current performance. There will be no additional performance indicator in terms of what we report on a quarterly basis, but certainly part of the Reg 44 reports.
Okay. Just what came to mind to me there was that we have visiting members for children's homes. I didn't know whether there was something that was being considered or even necessary.
It doesn't actually state that, but what we have done is try to mirror the quality assurance, so we can assure ourselves that the quality of care and support is absolutely of the standard we expect across our children's residential homes and also now our supported accommodation. So as we're continuing with the Reg 44 officer, it makes absolute perfect sense that once we receive registration that we look to replicate the independent visiting member to Denton and Rouston.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. I move that the report be received and ask that our comments relevant to the impact of the supported accommodation regulation 2023 raised in discussions be taken under consideration by Commission partners, officers and relevant portfolio holders. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you, and that is agreed. So we now move on to item 11, Corporate Parenting Panel Work Programme. This item on pages 73 to 76 of the agenda pack enables the panel to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Chiara, Scrutiny Officer. The Corporate Parenting Panel is asked to agree the work programme and identify any items for future meetings. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chiara Cazziano, Scrutiny Officer designated for this committee. The work programme is being reviewed at each meeting of the panel, and that is to ensure that the contents are still relevant and are still adding value to the works of this panel. So for the next meeting, which is now in September, we are due to receive 7 reports in total. So first off, we're due to receive the mental health needs and support available for children in care and care leavers in Lincolnshire report, the Children in Care Sufficiency Strategy for 2023-2027 and Market Position Statement for 2023-2024, the Children in Care Performance Measures for Q1, as well as the Fostering Quarterly Performance Report for Q1, and we're due to receive the Adoption Annual Report and the Fostering Annual Report. Those are for the year 2022-2023, and the outcomes from the Ofsted review that you mentioned at the beginning of this meeting. This concludes my update to members of the panel, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their cooperation, as this is my last meeting in this panel, supporting this panel. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that, so. I didn't get a promotion. Yeah. Thank you for all you've done. It's much appreciated. Do we have any questions or comments? I've got one. Sorry, Deborah, did you please fire away?
Can I just, in terms of management of time, that for the next meeting, it's also the statement of purpose for both adoption and fostering as well. So didn't want there to be insufficient time for those.
Okay. So something I just wanted to add at the beginning, if I might. We have Elizabeth that turns up to all our meetings, and we have Nicola that's coming to our meetings, and we have Anne. I'd just like to add an agenda item at the start, just to ask them to just describe where they're from and what they look to get out of it. It's probably the right. If that's okay with you all, just to get a feel. I know you sit there, and it would be nice just to get a bit of an overview. If you're happy with that, yeah, that's super, great, thank you. Otherwise, I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in pages 73 to 76 of the agenda pack. And any added items from today's discussions. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you. Then that is agreed. So this now concludes the business of the meeting, and thank you everybody once again for your attendance.